Many thanks for staying tuned. This is Worldview on Spectrum TV. Let's turn the spotlight to the Middle East, where Palestinians are beginning to return to Gaza's north as the Israeli military says a ceasefire is now in effect. Forces have pulled back to the lines agreed under the Trump plan, the IDF says, but will continue to remove any immediate threat. Hamas now has 72 hours to release all Israeli hostages, while Israel will release hundreds of Palestinian detainees. Now, this comes after the Israeli government approved the first phase of Donald Trump's ceasefire and hostage release return deal. Once the deal is operating, aid trucks will surge in to help Gaza's 2 million people, most of whom have been displaced. The mood in Gaza this morning is a mixture of hope and fear as Israel begins its partial military withdrawal.
First of all, I want to go back and see my house to make sure if it's still there or not. I've got some information that my house has been completely destroyed. We used to live there with my children's families. I will definitely need to find myself a toilet and a tent to live in if the house is gone. I am sure our lives will eventually go back to normal.
The top priority must be given to those dead bodies, like my 2 nephews, who are still under the rubble for more than 18 months. The priority is to get the dead bodies out from under the rubble and bury them in a dignified manner. This must be the top priority.
In this special report, we get to talk about everything that we need to know about the Gaza ceasefire deal. Israeli troops have begun withdrawing from parts of Gaza after the Israeli government approved the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire and hostage release deal.
I was just dealing with people from the Middle East, Arab people and other people on the potential peace deal for the Middle East. Peace for the Middle East, that's a beautiful phrase, and we hope it's going to come true, but it's very close, and they're doing very
And very importantly, the hostages are coming back. As you know, they consider them hostages. They talk about them as hostages, but there are approximately 28 dead people, mostly young, mostly men, but and boys. I mean, boys. The one woman talked about her baby. Her baby's 25 years old, but you know, to her it's her baby, and we're bringing them home, getting everything, and to those parents, the dead young man is just as important, as though this person were alive. It's amazing. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've been very much involved. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Under the agreement, first unveiled by Trump last week and signed following days of intense negotiations in Egypt, Israel now has 24 hours to withdraw to an agreed line within the Palestinian territory. Hamas will then have 72 hours to release all remaining Israeli hostages being held captive in Gaza, while Israel will release hundreds of Palestinian detainees. It comes just over 2 years after the Hamas-led attack on southern Israel on 7 October 2023, in which about 1,200 people were killed and 251 others taken hostage. This triggered a massive Israeli military offensive in Gaza, which has killed more than 67,100 people. Now, this is according to the territory's Hamas-run health ministry. Its figures are seen as accurate by the UN and other international bodies. What has been agreed upon in the peace deal? Now, the agreement has been formally approved by the Israeli cabinet. A ceasefire is meant to be in effect, though reports overnight suggest Israeli airstrikes continued in some areas.
We're at a momentous development in the last 2 years. We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims, and a central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal. We couldn't have achieved it without the extraordinary help of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They worked tirelessly with Ron and his team, our team. That and the courage of our soldiers who entered Gaza and the combined military and diplomatic pressure that isolated Hamas, I think, has brought us to this point.
Israeli ground forces have begun their withdrawal to an agreed line which, according to the spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office, would leave it in control of 53% of Gaza. A map distributed by the White House last week indicates that this will be the first of the 3 stages of Israeli withdrawal. The Israeli military said on Friday that troops were in the midst of adjusting operational positions. Once this withdrawal is complete, a 72-hour countdown will begin for Hamas to release all 20 hostages who are believed to still be alive. The return of the bodies of the 28 deceased hostages would follow, though it is unclear how long that could take. Israel would then release about 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences in Israel jails and 1,700 detainees from Gaza, a Palestinian source told newsmen. Their identities are currently unclear, but a list submitted by Hamas before the agreement was reached included high-profile figures serving multiple life sentences for deadly attacks on Israelis. One of the most high-profile prisoners, Marwan Barghouti, will not be released as part of the swap, according to an Israeli spokesperson. Israel will also return the bodies of 15 Gazans from the remains of each Israeli hostage, according to Trump's plan. Hundreds of lorries carrying humanitarian aid would also start entering Gaza. A famine was declared in part of the territory for the first time back in August by UN-backed experts, who said that more than 500,000 people were facing catastrophic conditions characterized by starvation, destitution, and death. Israel has repeatedly denied that there is starvation in the territory. Trump's plan specified that 600 lorry loads will be delivered each day, but Palestinian sources said there would initially be a daily minimum of 400, with the number increasing gradually after that. According to a senior U.S. official, a multinational force of around 200 troops overseen by the U.S. military will monitor the Gaza ceasefire. The force's makeup is likely to include troops from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. The official said their role would be to oversee and observe the ceasefire and make sure there is no violation or incursion. A second senior U.S. official said no U.S. forces will be on the ground in Gaza. The question on everybody's mind is, what happens next after the first phase of the peace plan deal? If completed, the first phase of Trump's 20-point plan would be followed by negotiations over the details of the later phases. But many of these points could be hard to reach an agreement on. The proposals, which you can read in full, says that it is agreed by both sides the war would immediately end. It says Gaza would be demilitarized and all military, terror and offensive infrastructure would be destroyed. It also says Gaza would be initially governed by a temporary transitional committee of Palestinian technocrats supervised by a board of peace headed and chaired by Trump and involving former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Governors of the trip would eventually be handed over to the Palestinian Authority, which administers the West Bank, once it has undergone reforms. Hamas, the armed group that has run the territory since 2007, will play no future role in its governors directly or indirectly according to the plan. Hamas members would be offered amnesty if they committed to peaceful coexistence. Another sticking point is the essence of Israeli troop withdrawal. Israel says its first withdrawal will see its retaining White House that will remain until Gaza is properly secured from any resurgence something Hamas is likely to want clarity on. Let's move now to the Palestinian people, where thousands of displaced Palestinians stream back towards their abandoned homes today after a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas went into effect and Israeli troops began pulling back from parts of Gaza. A massive column of displaced Gazans filed north through the dust towards Gaza City, the enclave's biggest urban area, which had been under attack just days ago in one of Israel's biggest offensives of the war. The Israeli military said the ceasefire agreement had been activated at noon local time. Israel's government ratified the ceasefire with Hamas in the early hours of Friday, clearing the way to partially pull back troops and fully suspend hostilities in Gaza within 24 hours.